Hello viewers, today for cleaning and servicing we have a Midea fan. I'm not sure what the brand was because this appears to have been painted over for some reason, which is kind of weird, but anyways, there's been a couple of suggestions as far as what brand this would have been sold under. I really have no way of knowing for certain because it probably came under multiple brands. It is from the February 2003 or the January 2002 according to the UL sticker, and this is very similar to the, at least the blade certainly is very similar to the SMC oscillating fan that my grandfather used to have, which was the model TH12. Well, this wasn't plugged in. This one. There's certainly a lot of similarities in the blades. So, anyways, this was a curbside trash find. It wasn't even near a trash, it was just sitting in the middle of a sidewalk. It was kind of comical. I should have taken a picture. Whoops. Let's plug it in and see how it runs. I believe it is having a problem. Yeah, the bearings are locked up. So that's obviously why it was discarded. Yeah, I'm not even going to run it up that way. That's terrible. So the bearings are completely dry. They need to be lubricated. Everything needs to be cleaned. You know what I think happened? I think the guard rusted out and they repainted it. Because if you look inside here, this thing is totally rusted and the paint is peeling off. And then it looks like this was repainted as well. The screws are painted over. Wow, that's weird. Huh. I think that's what happened. I think the guard got all rusty and so they repainted it. Huh. Well, I'll be. So this will be the third life that this fan is going to get. It's funny how some people know how to do some things and just have no clue about others. They knew how to repaint the car, but they couldn't oil the bearings. So this is all plastic in there, no metal thread. That's a little concerning. And here's the blade. Oh, wow. This has got a lot of hours on it. A lot of hours. This has definitely been cleaned before. That's strange. Why did they give up on it now after they've done so much work to it? Guard should be on there like this so that the handle's at the top. Looks like that's partially broken. That's still there, which often breaks. The rear guard, I don't really see any evidence of it being painted. Maybe. I don't know. This definitely just is rusted. Okay, so now we have a couple screws here we got to get out. Why is that not coming out of there? There it goes. Okay. Set that aside for cleaning. Okay, what else we got to do here? We have a screw on the back. longer bit for this. And there's a screw in the oscillator thing as well. Okay, that's off. It's a machine screw in the back. That's not as bad in there as I thought it was going to be. The amount of dust that's inside of there leads me to believe that this has been cleaned inside at least once. I mean, this is bad, but it's not like totally outrageous. I'm going to take this outside and blow it out with compressed air first, this way I don't make as much of a mess here in the studio. Okay, that's much better than it was. Now we shouldn't get a dusty mess everywhere. Now we have to get the shaft out. That piece has to come off, because we're going to have to sand down the shaft quite a bit, because it's very rusted. So I'm going to set this up like that, and then I should be able to tap that out. Let's see if I can push it the rest of the way through with this thing. There we go. Now I'm going to I think what I'll do is I'm going to put a drop of detergent oil to try to clean it out in the front. I got to be able to spin it up so that I can clean the shaft off. Nope, that's not good enough. Alright, let's try to go in from the back. I'm not running it like that. So let's try to get some oil in the rear bearing. The whole thing is very oily. I almost wonder if they tried to oil it, or maybe it was used in a kitchen or something like that. I don't know, but there's an awful lot of oil on everything. Now, let's see if that'll at least get it to run without making an awful sound. There we go. Okay. So now I can grab some sanding paper, wherever that may be. Where is the sanding paper? Okay, I have no idea where the sanding paper is, because I cleaned up and now I can't find anything. Okay, well, this is going to be an issue. I located the sanding paper. I wonder if the issue is a lack of knowing how to oil the rear bearing, because it seemed to me like the rear bearing was where the problem was. Okay, that should be good enough to get the bearing off. Yeah, there's all like dried up oil on the back. I wonder if that's what it was. I wonder if they knew how to oil the front, but they didn't know how to oil the back. You may never know. Alright, let's proceed with the disassembly. I'm going to go to the back of the motor now, and we're going to remove the 4 screws that are keeping the motor held together. Okay, let's see if this will open up. And these are always somewhat of a nuisance because the front part is not easily removed from the base. So I think what we got to do is I got to take the capacitor off here as well. And we should be able to pull it out like this. Okay. And these windings, okay, we got a thrust washer that just came out. This stator is not looking too good. It's a little bit browned inside. It's probably totally fine, and the browning is just the oil residue, because that oil residue is all over everything here. So I mean, I think it's fine. I'm not going to sit here and mag it out, but I think it's fine. It's running normally. So alright, so there's the motor, so I had to deal with that. I guess we should deal with this now. Let's clean and service this now. And then I'll reassemble the motor, and then we can clean the base off. So first let's get this out of here. That came out nicely. So we have, let's see what we have here. We have this thrust washer on the front. So that means this one would have come off the back. And you can see the difference in the front and the back here. Look at the back. That's all turned black. That's got wear marks on it. This is still white, and this has got some wear on it, but nothing major. So This definitely suffered severe lack of lubrication at many points in its life in the rear bearings. And that's probably what ultimately caused it to be discarded. Now, whether they knew how to oil the front and only oiled the front, or if they never oiled it at all, well, I don't know. But it certainly seems to me like somebody could have oiled the front at one point. Okay, so I'm going to clean this up really good, try to get all the old dried up oil off of there. Okay, and then I'm going to pull this off, clean this out. There's definitely starting to be some wear on there. Not sure it's anywhere near enough to cause a problem. But there is some wear on there. And these pieces here, they should be able to spin freely on the shaft. These are plastic pieces here. So this definitely needs to be completely cleaned out. Some of that's really stuck in there good. Okay, now that's clean inside. The outside of this doesn't really matter, just the front and back. If you had a lathe, you could go through this real quick with the lathe and take a hair thin layer off of there to get rid of that wear mark. But it'll run just fine with the wear mark on there. It's not really, I can't even feel it on there, it's just cosmetic. Okay, so that's looking pretty good now. I'm going to take some of the blue can, which is specifically for fee-ends. Fee-ends. And I'm going to put a little bit of oil on the shaft. And I'll put this on. And see how it spins freely on the shaft. That's what it's supposed to do. I'll put that back on. And this back on. And you want to try not to pick up the dirt that's on there, because that'll just cause the same problem again. So you can see that spinning freely, and that is not That's not the root cause of the issue, but it certainly will contribute to it. So let's get this all cleaned out as well. This one wasn't nearly as bad. Okay, a little more oil. Okay, so that's good. That's cleaned up. Well, not entirely. I just realized I didn't clean this at all. But this wasn't really that dirty, so I'm not concerned about it. Okay. So let's take a look into the motor here. We need to clean this out. The motor's definitely been running hot because I kind of melted off one of these tie wraps. But I think it's still got plenty of life left in it. I'm confident enough in it that I'm going to spend the time doing this. If I didn't think it was going to work, I wouldn't bother. All that gummed up oil in there. Not good. It just keeps coming. Okay, I think that's clean now. And as far as the windings themselves go, there's a little bit of dust left on there. I'm going to very, very carefully sweep it off. Don't want to do too much on here. This stator is getting pretty brittle. Don't really want to disturb it at all. Do want to get all the dust out of there though, because that's not going to help it any. Having that dust in there will just cause it to run even higher than it was. Okay. Not sure what this plastic piece in there is for. That's kind of weird. Alright, I'm going to set this back onto the thing here. I don't like having this just floating around. As they say in China, it invites accidents. Okay, so that's sitting on there now. Let's take a look at the other side of the motor, front, which has all that oily residue on it. This should not be anywhere near as dirty. I will clean it out just for good measure, but I think it's fine. Well, there actually was a fair bit of dirt in there. Okay. No problem, we'll get it out. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and sweep out the inside of here because there's some dust and oily residue all over it. All the air holes are free, and that's what I'm really concerned about, so I'm not going to go crazy in here, but if I can make it a little more presentable, I will. Okay, so that's been cleaned up. Now as far as lubrication goes, I'm going to get out the infamous zooming spout oil, which is for the electric motors. And I'm going to put some oil into the inside between the bearing and the outside where there's that kind of foam-like material. And that should absorb a couple drops of oil and hold it there for when the bearing needs it. Okay, and we'll do the same thing in the back. The back one is very dry. You can't see this. Probably still can't see it. No, maybe now you can see it. Oh yeah, now you can see it. Great angle. So all that stuff in between the bearing and the outside wall, that right there, that's where the oil needs to go. I'm going to fill that up and let it soak in all the oil. It's very dry. You want to go out of control because you can put too much and then it'll leak. Just enough to the point where you can see it's thoroughly saturated. Okay, now sandpaper all over the floor for some reason. Now what we're going to do is we're going to reassemble the motor. I don't like having it open because it just invites accidents. Before we do that, I'm going to brush off the remaining pieces of dust on the front of the windings. Again, being extremely gentle because they're brittle. Okay, now as far as oiling goes, I'm going to put some oil on the shaft, slide that through. And I'll put some oil on the back. And then we'll reassemble this. I believe the wire comes out the top. And it's kind of unavoidable, but you want to try to make sure that the old grease on there doesn't get on the bearing when you're soldering it in. Some inevitably will, but try to minimize that as best as possible. Okay. Now we're going to put the motor screws back in. And these do not have to go tight. They need to be even, and they need to be firm enough that they don't come out. But they don't have to go that tight. I'm going to put all of them in just kind of snug initially, and then I'm going to torque them all the same to finish it off. And I use this particular electric screwdriver because it has a good power level to it for this kind of use case, because I'll tighten this to the screwdriver's ability, and that won't be outrageously tight, and it's not going to be too loose either. Okay, so that's it. That's how I'm going to tighten them. Just that much. And that's completely adequate. Okay. Now, I'm going to take some more oil. I'm going to go down the back shaft here. A lot of play on here. I didn't think it looked like it was that worn, but maybe it's a little more worn than I thought it was. Some oil down the front. And I'm going to take a screwdriver and I'm going to hold this pretty hard. And I'm going to strike the shaft a little bit, just to get it into alignment. And now you can see it's spinning pretty freely. Okay, so let's put this back on. Not worried about any excess oil in the back because it'll just fall into the gearbox if anything. Okay, and everything's getting slippery. I hate when the tools get slippery. Unfortunately, that's kind of inevitable when you're working with oil. Okay, so I'm going to take this off to take a quick look in here. This appears to be adjustable. It does go as far out as it can. And this can be a total pain in the rear if this comes apart. There are, up in there's two little balls and a spring, and if that comes apart, it is infuriating to get it back together. So I'm going to hold this so it doesn't have any chance of coming apart. I don't usually use the oscillating mechanism, so I'm not really concerned about properly lubricating it. What I am going to do is put a couple drops of oil on the that has a certain name, like a worm screw or something, because that's always running up against there, even if the oscillation is engaged or not. So I like to at least keep that lubricated. And I'm going to turn it on real briefly just to run the oil through the whole thing there. Okay, that's adequate. Something needs to be oiled. Okay, I'll put these screws back in. These I'm not going to put very tight at all because they're only threading into plastic, so it's easily stripped. A little bit of grime on the back of here, I'll wipe that down. I don't get too particular inside of here, you can't see it. And as long as it's not restricting airflow, it's not really bothering me. Oh, we have a goof here. I caught that wire in the motor housing screws. Definitely do not want to do that. Have to loosen the whole thing to get that off. Okay, there we go, that's freed. Okay, just have to align it again, no big deal. Okay. And the reason I thought of checking that is because these fans, at least in like the late 90s or so, that were made by the Midea, they did have a recall. I think it was only on the pedestal models, but I really don't quite understand that because it's the same, or very similar internal concept where the motor will move and this wire kind of moves around in here, and eventually it scrapes up against here enough times and it can wear the insulation off, and that's a problem. So I don't really use these fans on oscillations anyways because I'm aware of that situation. I'm not sure if these are affected by the recall or not. I'm not sure if they ever really fixed it or not. I don't know. I still don't trust it. Some old grease on there, but it looks like it's working fine, so it can stay. The capacitor needs to go back in place, which has the Midea branding on it, which is kind of interesting. I didn't know Midea made their own capacitors. Okay, that's good. The base needs to be cleaned up now. Let's do a quick preliminary here with the dirtier towels. And this has like all that grease residue on it too, so I don't know. Maybe it was just a location use error, or not error, a location based situation that caused all this grease to get on there. I don't know. Let's see. There's a lot of grease like in this seam there, so let's see if that can be undone. I think it can. I think it can be undone relatively easily too. It's got something to do with this. Okay, this is hard. This is not wanting to come off. Oh, there we go. Maybe? Yeah, okay, there we go. The wonders of the right size tool. So there's going to be 3 of those clips. And then maybe a screw right there. That will hold it in place. Let's see. Okay, so now I can clean this. Where'd that screw go? I mean, it's not really necessary, I guess, but it should be here. Here it is. Okay. So I can wash that. That'll make it a fair bit easier. And then I'll just have to do this by hand. Not a big deal. It's got mounting holes on the base. That's kind of interesting.
Call from Luther. Call from Luther.
Okay, we're just about ready to begin reassembling. There's one piece of the motor that has to go back together still, and that is this. So we'll put that back in. And then we also have to put on, actually that may be it. That's for the oscillator key, that's for the rear. That's, okay, yeah, actually we're done. With the motor's assembled. Let's put the base back on. the motor cover. Just got to align with that flat angled piece in there. Finish that off with the screwdriver. It's too deep into there. Okay. And we had, where did it go? The oscillation mechanism. That's working. And before we put the cover back on, let's just do a quick test to make sure it's running. It is running, and that reminded me that the plug needs to be fixed. The plug is kind of bent up, and it's not plugging in and out very well. I'm tired of dealing with that, so let's fix it so that it plugs in and out well. Okay, that should plug in and out much better. And it does. Easy. Okay. Now for the front motor cover. What am I doing wrong here? Well, I guess this is not a perfect match to the back shape. This has got a strong magnetism to it. Is that coming from this thing? Or just a bit itself? That's a seriously magnetic bit. That's no joke. Okay, cool, I like that. Alright. Now, we're going to put the blades back on. Well, first the rear guard has to go on. Handle should go up at the top. And as far as these handles are concerned, I always bend them out a bit because like you can't fit your hand through there. It's dumb. So I kind of just bend them out like this, and then you can fit your hand through it and carry the thing like it was intended to be. Alright, this is all cleaned up inside and out, and this had like a sticky kind of residue on it as well, so I'm not sure what the history of this was. I can tell you someone definitely tried to paint it at some point. If they also tried to oil it on the front, maybe, I don't know, but I think it was definitely cleaned and painted at least once. So this would be the second life that this fan is now being given. Really would like to know what brand this is, but it may forever be a mystery. I'll probably repaint this at some point because it's starting to come off again, but even as is, aside from that, it's pretty presentable. So let's go ahead and plug this in and see how it works now. the guard is loose, but it's running, and it's running strong too. Yeah, it's throwing the air out. No problem. Sounded like it had a cool startup sound too. Some pretty good balance. I don't know what that noise is. Could be a thrust washer, because I think there's too much in and out play on there. Probably could use new thrust washers. I mean, the thing is tired. It's, what is it, 18 years old now? We're in 2021, it was made in 2003. Clearly has a ton of hours on it. But, I mean, it's still going. I really liked this project. There's something about taking something that people discard and say, oh, this is worthless, and then you turn it into something that's totally good again. And this is a perfectly good fan. It's not even dirty anymore. It's not really marked up or beat up at all. It's really in pretty decent condition. There wasn't that paint splatter on the guard. I mean, this would look like a brand new fan. Let's see if I can grab that startup sound. Yeah, it does have a startup sound. That scratchy sound is probably the oscillation gear. That was the medium, and lastly we'll go to the low. Okay, so there you have it. The fan from the trash is running strong once again. And it probably will continue to do so for years and years to come. Very cool. It's pretty powerful too. I mean, it's not one of the translucent blade fans from the 80s, but for something made in the last 2 decades, I'd say this is as good as it gets.